Isn't it great to see so many people these days waking up? I mean, it's so encouraging, isn't it? Waking up is, it's not the kind of term I actually like, but I think it's nice to see that people are realizing that for centuries really these days, people have been duped. They're starting to work out that actually there have been so many lies pushed onto them that their perception of the world is beginning to change. They're beginning to realize that actually they have more power than they thought. We grow up in this world in which certain things have been told to us and we've accepted them because our parents lived with them. But now, thanks to recent events, really, people are beginning to sort of go, hang on a minute, this is not quite right, is it? For example, a friend of mine sent me a video of this chap who he's another person who seems to be stuck in the old ways, it seems to me. And he was saying this, he was dressed all in black, as a lot of these people do. And he was saying, that legislation, you know, the stuff that Parliament enacts, these acts and statutes and all of this stuff. He said, it was saying it was all, that was law. He was questioned, you see. He says, is legislation law? It's not, is it? Some awake person asked him. And he said, oh, no, you misunderstand. He says, no, of course, legislation, acts of Parliament, statutes, these things, they're all law. And I watched this and I thought, well, you're a misguided individual, aren't you? I mean, I know, of course, he has to say that because it's his job. It's his job to pretend that these rules that a bunch of people behind closed doors have kind of come up and invented and want to push on people and say, oh, no, this is the way it is. He has to say that, otherwise he'd be out of a job. And to be honest with you, if you're in that sort of legal business, you earn quite a lot of money by keeping these lies perpetuated across the world, really, in my opinion. You see, man, and by that I do mean woman as well, but living men and women, when you're born into a world naked like everybody. And you're pretty much equal, aren't you? I mean, okay, admittedly, some people are born into richer families, some people are born into poorer families, and some people are born into families that didn't expect you to be born at all. And some people have been desperate to have you and they've had to jump through hoops in order to get you. But when you arrive as a little baby with your umbilical cord and your nakedness, you are pretty much equal. Oh, admittedly, some will be bigger than others. Some will be a different colour from others. Perhaps some will have defects, whilst others will have less defects. Some will perhaps be more intelligent. Perhaps some will be nurtured better than others. All of those things. But once you've actually arrived and you pop out, we're all equal. We're all naked. We all start with nothing, and we all go back to the grave with nothing, other than perhaps a few insights that we've learnt as the spirit departs from the body that decays. I think we can all accept that. Now, if you are born pretty much equal, there's nobody above you, there's nobody who's more important than you. We're all born, as I say, the same. So how is it possible that some people decide, you know what, we're going to be above these people, we're going to oppress these people, we're going to tell these people what to do? I don't think that that's fair or right or as it should be. And clearly that doesn't hold well. If you're being told, oh, well, I'm above you, well, what gives you the right? Who gives you the right? We're created, are we not, by a creator of some description, and you might call it God, you might call it the source, you might call it universal mind, you might call it consciousness. Somewhere something has created us. We've popped into existence, poof, like that, like a puff of logic. Here we are, and then we're looking about going, oh, blimey, oh, hello, there's another one of us. How lovely, how do you do? But this other one of us has decided, oh, I've got some mates and we're going to come up with some rules and we're going to tell you that you're inferior to us. Well, that's not true, is it? The only way they can do that is if they've got thugs and weapons, and they come along and they say, and they beat you up and they say, look, we're stronger than you. We've got these thugs, we've got these weapons that you must do as we say. Well, that's oppression, isn't it? That's oppression. And that's not very nice. It's not helpful. It's not law. It's thuggery. And so, in my mind, there's a difference between what we call legislation, these acts and these statutes. I mean, the name gives it away, doesn't it? Acts. It's theatre, isn't it? You have acts in theatre. People act out parts. Shakespeare said the world is a stage and the men and women are merely players, which means that they enter into this play and they take part in this play, but it's not actually real life at all. And you follow the acts, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and often there are statues that you see in the plays, the tableaus, as they begin and they come into it. So it's all theatre, it's not real. But of course we think it's real because a bunch of people tell us, oh yes, it's law. But it's not law, because law is about natural things, isn't it? You've got gravity. Take an apple and drop it onto the floor, as Newton discovered, and you go, well, that's repeatable. I can do that 1,000,000 times and still that apple will fall to the ground. Might not be worth eating at the end of it, it'd be pretty much bruised. But you can see that that's a natural law. It's a law of nature. Just as if you fertilize an egg with a sperm, you'll end up with a baby, and you can repeat that many, many times. Okay, if you've got some defects and you didn't get it quite right, but if you do it correctly, you get the same result. Same with the sun going around the globe, unless you're a flat earther and then it's doing a different journey. But basically, it's the same thing. The natural law, the way of things is repeatable, it's consistent, and it's there, isn't it? It's just there. It's not changeable. You can't just go, oh, do you know what? This natural law, this law, we're going to change it. Today, we're going to say that gravity it doesn't go at this one speed, the force velocity, whatever it is, or the speed of light. Man can't change these laws. So there is a difference between law and legislation. And legislation is that sort of mythological nonsense that man is put upon the living man, and they're supposed to agree to it. But it's just a set of rules. And why would you agree to a set of rules if you think that those set of rules are not useful? Now, there's some rules you could argue and say, well, if we all drive on the left-hand side, as we do in this country, then we will avoid collisions. Well, that seems like a sensible rule. So we can say that rules are necessary, some rules are necessary, but you can go a bit too far with these rules. For example, you could be driving on a road, let's say, in the middle of the night, there's nobody there, and somebody else has put a camera in a gantry and decided that, oh, you've driven a few miles an hour faster than they want you to drive. There's nobody there. There's nobody to get hurt. And therefore, they caught you on camera and they're going to charge you. They're going to charge you some money, and they're going to penalise you for driving a few miles faster than what they like. Well, who's to say that that is true or fair? No one. I mean, obviously, if you have a collision, if you're stupid to drive too fast for the conditions of the road, you have a collision with somebody and you damage somebody, that's very different. That's where somebody's got a complaint and say, actually, I think you were driving too fast, mate. Look, you've hit my car, or you've worried me as you went zooming past. I have a complaint. And then if there is a complaint, then why not bring those people in front of a bunch of other people, say 12 just men and women, your peers, and say, let's argue it out about them, which you might call having a trial by jury, a jury of people who will have a look at the case and go, oh yes, actually you were driving a bit fast, or no, actually you weren't really driving a bit fast, but you have damaged that car, and I think that the remedy would be to compensate that person. And between those 12 people, let's say, and I'm picking out 12 as an arbitrary figure, but a sensible number of people would work that out and say, do you know what, we can work this out and all parties are happy. And the person who had the complaint against them would go, yeah, actually, all right, then, I put my hand up, fair cop, as they would say. It's a fair situation you have. But he might say, well, no, I still don't believe it. We say, well, there's damage in the car. Look, you can't ignore that. There's damage on your car. And this bloke's got the evidence to prove it. It's like, okay, yeah, no, fair enough. But also, not only that, they can say, well, maybe driving this fast on wet roads is not advisable. Maybe we should have a limit. Maybe there should be a limit. And between those people, they could come up with that concept and go, we'll have a limit and we'll make it a rule. But we won't necessarily charge you money if you go above that rule in the middle of the night and nobody's hurt. So I think what I'm trying to say is that this legislation that we've all been told, these cameras that capture you, these cameras that say, oh, you've done a naughty thing. And you go, well, where's the victim then? Where's the victim? Where's the crime? There isn't a crime. There isn't a victim. It's just somebody else has decided that they're going to capture money. I parked on this road and somebody's painted on it and said, oh, you can't park there. And it might be sensible that they've painted areas of the road and say, actually, in a sensible society that, you shouldn't do that. Well, this is more about education, isn't it? Rather than just having a penal system that says, well, you've abused our system, we're going to charge you. I think rules are good for some things, but when they start being oppressive, and we've seen how it is, and a bunch of people can make up those rules with no address, then they call it legislation and they call it an act. And a king seems to say, well, I will have the authorities to say yay or nay to this. Well, what gives him the right to say yay or nay to any of this? What gives him the right, other than the fact that he's come from a dynasty of people that eventually at one point in time invaded a country, say in 1066, with a bit of thuggery and said, well, I'm going to claim all this land. I'm going to call it mine. We'll call it the Crown Estate, although he's actually sold it to the City of London in 1933. But most people think that the land belongs to the king, of course, and part of the Crown Estate. What gives him the right? What gives the government elected people to serve for us to create these rules and things in the first place? And this is something that I've been thinking about and I've been exploring on my channel. You would have seen I've had many different guests talking about it from different points of view. What gives one man and a bunch of others, a bunch of thugs, the right to tell another man what they should do? And we do know now that actually a lot of these people have worked out this system in which you act under a legal fiction. You see, rules are only there if you agree to them, if you give consent, if you acquiesce. And these people will get you to believe that you are a comedy character created, a legal fiction, if you like, in this Shakespearean play where all the men and women and the players are only, and all the world is a stage, you know the phrase, and that you're playing off this part, this legal fiction. And if you think that you're this legal fiction, then you have to abide by these rules, this legislation, these acts and things. But if you think, I'm not this legal fiction, I'm just a man or a woman, I live and breathe, I'm a nameless sentient being inside a body of flesh and blood, I'm not playing your game, I'm out of your system, then these rules basically don't apply. But the one law that does apply, and it's a sensible law, surely, is if you do no harm to anybody else, they're doing no harm to you, then we're all living in harmony. Half the time you don't need these rules. You're using common sense. You're using your own ability to think instead of having a bunch of thugs telling you what you should and shouldn't do and extracting money from you for the privilege. I think natural law is a far, far better way. Do no harm, and we can all live in harmony.